16 at home to Sacramento. All 5 Lakers starters scored in double figures, but the Lakers got only 16 points off the bench. LeBron finished with 28 points and 12 assists. The Lakers are still 3 games behind Dallas for the 8th and final playoff spot in the Western Conference. The Lakers are back in action Wednesday night against the Clippers, who also need to regroup. Paul George did not play yesterday. He's got a sore left knee. Norman Powell started in George's absence. He led the Clippers with 21. Utah's women's basketball team snapped USC's 7-game winning streak. Utah won by 6 at Galen Center. The Trojans dropped to 11-5 in the Pac-12. USC freshman Juju Watkins had a game-high 30 points. The 12th time this season, the Compton native has had 30 or more. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte with the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial. In a public opinion survey commissioned by KBLA Talk 1580 and conducted by Viteris, the black voters surveyed were highly enthusiastic about the March 2024 primary. The race for Los Angeles District Attorney is being hotly contested. Incumbent DA George Gascon's efforts to implement progressive criminal justice reforms have generated pushback from within his own office, the broader law enforcement community, and some in the general public. He was the subject of at least 2 failed attempts to qualify recalls. The concerns about crime are reflected in the polling results of black voters. Nearly 1 in 4 have been victims of violent crime or have someone close to them who has been a victim. 1 in 5 black voters have personally been victims of property crime in the last 2 years. A majority of respondents feel less safe than they did a year or 2 ago, but they reject the notion that criminal justice reform has gone too far. This year, black voters will be looking for candidates who speak to the complexity of the issues as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. Nearly half of black voters have an unfavorable view of DA Gascon, but his challengers are largely unknown. Nearly half of the black voters are also undecided, which means there's a clear opportunity for candidates to connect with black voters. Our poll makes 3 things abundantly clear. Black voters matter. Black voters are closely following this race, and the candidates for DA have a lot of work to do. KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to the mobilization and use of the franchise to empower our audience to identify and pursue their interests in advancing equity, inclusive representation, and multiracial solidarity. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte. We welcome your feedback.
Live from historic Limerick Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, we'll speak with UCLA sociology professor and author Dr. Marcus Anthony Hunter about his provocative new text, Radical Reparations, Healing the Soul of a Nation. I know there's some who think that's oxymoronic, that you can engage in radical reparations and yet heal the soul of this nation. That's his book. We'll talk about it with Marcus Anthony Hunter today in our second hour. In our third hour, Donnell Rawlings joins us to talk about his first stand-up comedy special, A New Day, on Netflix, produced by his longtime friend, some guy named Dave Chappelle. This is one of 4 specials Dave is producing for Netflix. As you'll recall, we've had the other 2 persons on already whose specials Dave produced. That would be Earthquake and Lunel. Now up, Donnell Rawlings. Dave Chappelle is doing it big on Netflix for all his friends. And so we'll talk to Donnell Rawlings today about his stand-up special, get some laughs on in our third and final hour. But let's commence today's show talking politics with the Amy Goodman. I am so honored, as always, to be in dialogue with Amy Goodman. She is celebrating now, get this, her 28th anniversary this month, 28 years as host of one of my favorite programs, Democracy Now! Amy Goodman, congratulations. Good to have you on this program. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Tavis, and hello to all your listeners, and congratulations to you on KBLA.
No, thank you. It's a delight to be in this space with you as we try to do our part to bring to the national audience more progressive radio. You know this better than anybody. I call talk radio in this country a conservative citadel. And yet there are a handful of voices that have broken through, and nobody's done it quite like you, and you've done it independently. The media, as you well know, is corporatist, no question about that. Only 2 or 3 companies pretty much own everything these days. But for 28 years, you've come up, as we say in the black church, the rough side of the mountain. You've cut against the grain for 28 years, and everybody knows Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! How have you done it so successfully for 28 years?
Well, first of all, I work with an amazing team of people. And, we come out of the Pacifica Radio Network, though we're a separate organization. Mm-hmm. And that was founded 75 years ago in the Bay Area. A war resistor named Lou Hill came out of the detention camps after World War II and said there's got to be a media outlet not run by corporations that profit from war, but run by journalists and artists. And so that was the beginning of Pacifica. In Bay Area, in Los Angeles, in New York, WBAI, Washington, and KPFT in Houston went on the air in 1970. It wasn't weeks before the Ku Klux Klan strapped dynamite to the base of the transmitter in Houston and blew KPFT's transmitter off the air.
Wow.
They got back on the air a few weeks later, and then the Klan strapped 15 times the dynamite to the base of the transmitter and blew it up again right in the middle of Arlo Guthrie singing Alice's Restaurant, which I thought was a good song. But anyway, it then took them months to get back on the air. And in 1971, January, Arlo went back to Houston to finish his song, and then the media was covering it, and KPFT went back on the air. I can't remember if it was the Grand Dragon or the Exalted Cyclops, because I often confuse their titles, but he said it was his proudest act. And I think that's because he understood how dangerous independent media can be. Dangerous because it allows people to speak for themselves. And when you hear someone speaking from their own experience, whether it's a Palestinian child or an Israeli grandmother or an uncle in the South Bronx or an aunt in Iraq, who say, oh my gosh, that sounds like my aunt. That sounds like my uncle. And you might not even like your uncle, but it makes it much less likely for you to want to destroy that person. And I really do think that that is the beginning of peace. That understanding is the beginning of peace. And I think the media can be the greatest force for peace on earth. Yeah. Instead, all too often, it's wielded as a weapon of war.
It's called Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report, for obvious reasons. Nobody has done it better than Amy Goodman for 28 years now, celebrating that milestone this month as she takes off on another year. Of course, it's presidential election season, so there's a whole lot of news, political news and beyond, to talk about with Amy Goodman in this first hour. Tomorrow's the primary in Michigan. Just a lot of news. A big article in the New York Times today about Joe Biden doing a 180 on immigration. Another story I read today about a divided White House. There are those inside the White House, not outside, inside. On the president's team, there's a divide about his own age and his policy on Israel. Huge divide inside the Biden White House, we are told. In another major story, Congress failed to pass legislation to avoid a shutdown come Friday. Oh, Lord, I'm just getting started. A whole lot to talk about with Amy Goodman this hour. And who knew that backstory? I've known Amy for years, and I didn't know the backstory. You know, independent media must be dangerous when the Klan blows up your tower, not once, but twice. It's going to be fire for the hour with Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! On Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Politics has become so messy lately, it's hard to find a reason to be hopeful. Hi, my name is Shakira. I'd like to tell you why Adam Schiff gives me hope. My parents raised me to take my right to vote seriously, so I try to stay on top of what's going on. I saw Adam Schiff lead the impeachment and insurrection hearings. He seemed like someone I could believe in. Then I actually met him at the MLK parade in South Central LA this year. Adam listened. He cared. I got to see who he is. He understands the struggle we have with the cost of living, all the parents working extra shifts and taking second jobs to get by. He gets a threat to our democracy and our freedoms. Adam Schiff knows how tough things really are for a lot of us, and I believe he's going to do something about it. It gives me hope, but hope isn't enough. We need to vote for Adam Schiff for Senate.
I'm Adam Schiff, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Schiff for Senate.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
Back to more of Amy Goodman right now, who I am celebrating in this hour as she now embarks on year 28 as the host of Democracy Now! You know, Amy, that title is certainly a double, maybe triple, quadruple entendre. When you used the phrase, when you came up with that phrase, Democracy Now!, how did you intend for us to parse that?
I mean, I think it is a demand, and I think it is that media is the most important agent or the most important force for democracy now, to have a free and open media. And that's what we have to fight for every day, which actually makes me think of another news story, which is Julian Assange. And folks may not hear very much about him in the U.S. media, but this is a guy who's been imprisoned for years in the notorious Belmarsh maximum security prison in Britain. He was founder of WikiLeaks, which released so much information about Iraq and Afghanistan, State Department logs going back decades. Not a favorite of any government, Republican or Democrat, because, you know, he's actually doing what journalists do. I mean, you think of Evan Gershkovich in Russia. What was he doing? He was arrested by Putin's men when he was going after military secrets, because that's what the best journalists all over the world do. You think of Cy Hirsch exposing the My Lai massacre. Governments don't like this, but that's our role as journalists, is to go to where the silence is. So you have Julian Assange. He is arrested by the British government, not for something he did in Britain, but because the U.S. wants to extradite him to the United States, where he would be tried, and if found guilty, he faces 175 years in prison. 2 weeks ago, the Australian government, he's Australian, the parliament, passed a resolution across the political spectrum. Nothing united them, and they're divided like they are in the United States, like Julian Assange, saying, you must free this man. He has spent years behind bars, at least 4 years in Belmarsh, and before that, Ecuador granted him political asylum, but he could only make it as far in London to the Ecuadorian embassy, where he lived for like 7 years. I interviewed him a number of times. You're cramped up in this tiny embassy. So he has been basically in detention for well over a decade. But it's not about Julian. It is about a free press. And we have covered this story for years, and President Biden, when he was vice president, called him a high-tech terrorist because he released documents. Now, what's an example of those documents? You know, video and paper. In 2007, a group of men in Iraq, Iraqis, were walking, and a U.S. Apache helicopter flew over Baghdad. And they weren't rogue, these soldiers in the helicopter. And we know all this because there was video in the helicopter, not a peace activist on the ground. And you hear the men cursing and screaming. These are these soldiers cursing and laughing. And they call back to base, can we engage? And they open fire on this group of men below. They kill them. One of them is hobbling, crawling away, has been hit. And a van pulls up, a dad with his 2 kids going to school. He tries to help the men, and they blow up the van. And 2 of those men worked for Reuters, Namir Noor Eldin, an up-and-coming 22-year-old videographer, and his driver, Saeed Shama, father of 4, 40 years old. They were killed. Reuters asked repeatedly from the U.S. military, we want to see, we know you have a video. They wouldn't release it. Ultimately, Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, released it, and it was under the title Collateral Murder. It was basically showing a war crime. They released it in 2010. And this is, of course, what the U.S. government doesn't want you to see, just like they didn't want people to know about the My Lai massacre, where U.S. soldiers opened fire and killed hundreds of Vietnamese men, women, children, and infants. But it's our job as journalists. We're supposed to hold those in power accountable so that acts like these won't get repeated. And that's exactly what WikiLeaks did over and over again. So Australia is asking for them to drop the charges. There was just a hearing last week in the High Court in Britain, and we'll see what happens.
As I listen to you tell that story, I am reminded, and I kind of intimated this earlier, that we live in a country where there are really just a few sources now that control most of all the media, the corporate media that we read, watch, listen to. The internet is a whole nother issue. But what's the price, to your mind? What is the price that we pay for having media that is so entrenched in corporate America?
I mean, it is a threat to democracy. It's as simple as that. It's not only corporations, it's the government. You know, I covered Haiti for a lot of years, and one of the things that would happen when a coup would begin in Haiti was the cousters, the thugs, would go after the radio stations where they said they played musique engagée, engaged music. You know, we are there not only to inform, because I think of so much of the corporate media that's got those pundits on who know so little about so much, explaining the world to us and getting it so wrong, but to provide a platform for people to speak for themselves. That primarily, when you listen to someone, it changes you. And that's what we have to do, is to provide a forum for, well, I see the media as a huge kitchen table that stretches across the globe, that we all sit around and debate and discuss the most important issues of the day, war and peace, life and death, and anything less than that is a disservice to a democratic society.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. You and I have been friends for many years now, and I don't know. Well, I know I haven't. I've never asked you this question, so brace yourself. I want to ask you now. Tell me why it is. Is it by choice or is it by chance that we don't see your face and we don't hear your voice more in that corporate media? I'm talking now. Why don't I see Amy Goodman on Meet the Press and Face the Nation? Why don't I see you on CNN? Why don't I see you on MSNBC? Why don't I see you on Fox? I mean, all of these outlets, we see, to your point, these talking heads, these pundits all the time. Nobody in this country has a larger following in independent media than you do. You're on television and radio all day, every day, somewhere in this country. And yet, for all that you represent and for all the stories that you break and for all the stories that you cover that corporate media doesn't cover, one would think, I'm not naive here, one would think that by bringing Amy Goodman on, you're going to get a different take, a different perspective because of what you do so well with your team every day. So is it by choice or by chance that we don't see and hear more of you in the corporate media?
Well, Tavis, I'm not a retired general. I'm not a colonel. But I am trying to bring people a kernel of truth and bring people a different kind of general news. But I even want to say for that, I mean, we interview plenty of military folks. But in the media, when you have a general who is dragging their feet on war or a colonel who is saying, we really got to question what's happening, you rarely see them as well. And I think what happens in the corporate media is you have this strict divide. Are you representing the Democrats or are you representing the Republicans? And when we see things in a very different way, like you do too, that changes the whole picture. They can't neatly peg you and say you're going to be on this side or that. And I say it's on the side of democracy, and answers are not that simple. And, you know, what I'm happy about is I found at the beginning of my career what journalists look for their whole lives, and that is independence. And that's what's so important. You know, actually, just as we hit our 28th anniversary on February 19th, I didn't say it on February 19th because we were too busy with the news, but I said it with Juan Gonzalez, who's been doing it with me for 28 years, and that's also a great honor. We talked about that, and we also that day passed the 2 million subscriber mark on YouTube. And so people are accessing democracy now all over the world.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing journey. And for those of us who are in the independent lane with you, trust and believe. I know this is not a cakewalk. It is not easy. It's a challenge every single day for funding and for access and for opportunity. It is not easy. But again, I celebrate Amy Goodman on this program and in this hour as we're heard across the country because nobody has done it quite like Amy has done it and does it every single day, bringing us a different perspective that we don't hear elsewhere. Let me. I'm watching my clock here. Let me move now and cover some topics, some political trending topics that I want to get your take on. I don't need to color these things too much for you. I'll just throw them at you. So tomorrow is the Michigan primary. What say you about that? We're all watching it. We all have been covering the story, of course. A variety of stories about the Arab American community and Rashida Tlaib and those who told Biden don't even think about coming here. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here about Michigan as a primary state. Joe Biden only won it by 3 points over Trump a few years ago. He may be in trouble in Michigan. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really important. Michigan is a battleground state. And you have a group of Arab American leaders in Michigan who are saying for this primary, I think it's over 50 now, like the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, which has one of the highest populations of Arab Americans in the country. Mayor Hamoud is saying they are voting uncommitted for the primary. This is very serious. It's like, remember when, I think it was Nevada, where Nikki Haley lost to none of the above?
That's right.
If Biden is challenged by uncommitted, that's a very big problem for him. I mean, overall, obviously, he's not really challenged in Michigan. But clearly, the Biden administration is concerned about this because they've been sending people out to court the Arab American community. And what these Arab American leaders are saying, First, I think they sent out Julie Chavez Rodriguez, who is his campaign manager, and many said they wouldn't meet with her because they didn't want to meet with the campaign manager. They wanted to talk policy because they're deeply concerned about what's happening in Israel and Gaza. I mean, we are talking about nearly and probably far more than 30,000 people dead in Gaza. It is horrifying. Today reported on a 2-month-old baby boy, 2-month-old baby boy who starved to death in Gaza. The level of hunger now, we talked to the award-winning poet, Mossab Abu Toha. He writes for the New Yorker magazine today, and he and his family made it out, and after he was detained, by the way, by the Israeli military, they made it out to Cairo. But his brother, his sister-in-law, who just had a baby in Gaza, they didn't make it out, and they're eating animal feed. And, you know, many international agencies, especially the United Nations, the World Food Program had to stop, had to pull out. You have UNRWA, that is the major source of support, supporting hospitals, healthcare in Gaza, under siege. And Biden pulled the funding for UNRWA that serves thousands of Palestinians. They are facing massive starvation, let alone the daily assaults. And this is directly tied to the Arab American community in Dearborn. I think of Dr. Tariq Haddad. This is a cardiologist who just spilled his heart on Democracy Now! He lives in Virginia. He was invited by Secretary of State Tony Blinken to a roundtable discussion. And he said he lost 100 members of his family in Gaza. And he refused to meet with Blinken. He said, we are not campaign fodder. We need a ceasefire in Gaza. We need peace. I think of an amazing guy who just died, 93 years old, Johan Galtung, considered the father of peace studies in the world. He's from Norway. And what a ceasefire would mean. It would mean saving the lives of thousands of people. Like Johns Hopkins just did a study and said if there was a ceasefire today, at least immediately, 75,000 over time, people's lives would be saved. This is terrifying. What's happening in the Arab American community right now is most sensitive to it, but I also have to say the Jewish community. I mean, you have Jewish Voice for Peace. I was covering the Grand Central Terminal demonstration in New York. 1,000 Jewish Americans, led by Holocaust survivors, professors, students. 400 of them got arrested, saying, not in my name, ceasefire now. Michigan matters tomorrow. Biden understands that. And Tavis, you just said yes. There is a major battle going on within the Biden administration. You had a group of top folks from the Biden administration after the Arab American leaders refused to meet with the campaign manager. John Feiner, I think he's the deputy national security advisor. Samantha Powers, you know, she's now head of USAID. Top officials went out and had a private meeting with Arab American leaders who would meet with them. And the New York Times got a hold of a recording of the meeting, and you had John Feiner saying, we have made serious mistakes. They talked about the statements.
Let me pause for a second there. I'm just watching this clock here. When we come forward, I want to come right back to this issue because this is significant. Amy's unpacking it brilliantly and beautifully as she always does every day on her own program, Democracy Now!, now celebrating 28 years. But this is a major piece today in the New York Times. If you haven't had a chance to pull it yet, pull it for yourself, read it for yourself. But there is a divide in the White House, we are told, among the president's team, amongst his team, about two issues. One, about his Israel policy and about his age. I mean, so we in the media, corporate or independent, talk about these issues every day. The president's age and his policy in Israel. And it's one thing for us to talk about on the outside. But inside the White House, there is a divide amongst his own team on these issues. We'll unpack that a bit more and cover a few other topics when we come forward with our guest in this hour, the host for 28 years now, Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report, Amy Goodman, who's on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Both President Biden and Donald Trump will visit the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas this week. Biden will travel to Brownsville Thursday to meet with Border Patrol agents, law enforcement, and local leaders and call for the need to pass the Senate bipartisan border security deal. Trump will reportedly visit Eagle Pass, Texas on the same day and deliver remarks. It comes as the Biden administration is facing pressure to stop the surge of migrants at the southern border. Goochland County, Virginia is honoring the legacy of 14 students who made history. The County Historical Society yesterday unveiled a plaque that pays tribute to the first black students at Goochland High School. One of the students who integrated the school in 1965 was there. He remembers not being afraid, just angry. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Joe Buck and John Smoltz welcoming you back to the City Center Convenience Mart. Uh-oh. She's looking at the cigarettes, but she just grabs the gum off the counter. Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer. Go to takeahealthystand.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Another rough day for both of LA's NBA teams. The Lakers lost by 10 at Phoenix. The Clippers lost by 16 at home to Sacramento. All 5 Lakers starters scored in double figures, but the Lakers got only 16 points off the bench. LeBron finished with 28 points and 12 assists. The Lakers are still 3 games behind Dallas for the 8th and final playoff spot in the Western Conference. The Lakers are back in action Wednesday night against the Clippers, who also need to regroup. Paul George did not play yesterday. He's got a sore left knee. Norman Powell started in George's absence. He led the Clippers with 21. Utah's women's basketball team snapped USC's 7-game winning streak. Utah won by 6 at Galen Center. The Trojans dropped to 11-5 in the Pac-12. USC freshman Juju Watkins had a game-high 30 points. The 12th time this season, the Compton native has had 30 or more. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king.
Looking for a career you'll love with flexibility, great pay, and benefits, and one of the country's top workplaces? Join the growing team at Progressive Insurance. Go to progressive.com/careers and apply online today.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of this light of ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement. A dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This light of ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This light of ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org. SKIRBALL.org.
Some people just know the best places to eat around town. Those are the people who know to choose Allstate. They know exactly where to go to get exactly what you're wanting. They know where to find the spiciest hot pot, the gooeyest brownies, and the tenderest, most flavorful portobello steak. Those people also know that safe drivers save 40% with Allstate.
Saving 40% is based on the national average premium savings for Allstate auto customers with a clean driving record versus those without. Savings vary by state and vary based on how you buy, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
We're from Washington. We love Febrez's new scent. Refresh and energize.
So much we made a song about it.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I'm rooting for Amy Goodman, although she doesn't need my cheerleading. She's done quite well for 28 years as the host of Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report, and how thrilled am I to once again in the course of my career, broadcast career, to be in dialogue on my stage, my program with Amy Goodman, and what a conversation it's been so far. And I want to continue and make the most of the time I have left between now and the top of the hour. So, Amy, we were talking about the White House, and I just want to just get a little deeper into this. As I said a moment ago, it's one thing for us in the media, corporate or independent media, to be talking about these issues every day. But when these stories break about the divide that is in the White House, of course, publicly they want to put on a united front. But now we know, courtesy of a number of sources, and indeed another big story today in the New York Times, we now know that there's a divide inside the Biden White House. And again, every administration doesn't have to be in lockstep. That's why you have these private meetings behind closed doors. They argue, they fight, they come to conclusions, they come to decisions. So it's politics. I get it. And everybody has a chance to express themselves in these meetings in the White House. And I've been in a few of them over the course of my career. But when we read these kinds of stories, that they are divided about his age and whether you should stay in the race, they're divided inside the Biden White House about his Israel policy. On the outside, how do you read the division on the inside?
I mean, it's really interesting on the inside. I think of Josh Paul. He was a top-level guy in the State Department in charge of military procurement or sales. And when after the Israeli assault on Gaza began, he just could not countenance it anymore. And he quit, and he issued a public letter. We've spoken to him a number of times. I think about the 1,000 black pastors from across the country saying they haven't seen anything like this among their congregants since the Civil Rights Movement. The level of rage about where the Biden administration is standing. I mean, you have in the last week, once again, for the third time, the Biden administration vetoed a UN Security Council resolution for a ceasefire. We had on Bishop William Barber, who said all moral leaders needed to say no to what Hamas did to children and women, and no to what Israel, the Israeli government, and Netanyahu is now continuing to do. You know, he wrote this article, and he said, I wrote about Hamas. I also challenged the apartheid state that the Netanyahu regime has had in Israel. We said we must speak as one voice, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, to say the indiscriminate killing of women and children in this war is immoral. And, you know, youth, the divide among youth it's like Biden had 80% of the youth, has 20% of the youth. And as we were talking about, the Arab American community was up to 60%, now down to 17%. And people in the White House represent all of these groups. And they understand, and they're feeling the outcry around this policy and asking, Joe Biden, why? It's not as if Joe Biden has championed or embraced Netanyahu for decades. It's not as if, like Trump, they were best of friends. So why they're asking, is he continuing, even though he will increasingly say, we're questioning, we're putting hard questions, Netanyahu, we're telling him not to build more settlements. But, the proof is not in the talk, it's the walk, and it's the level of arms sales that they are using to kill Palestinians every day. And Jews more than anyone. I mean, I speak also as a Jewish journalist. Jews more than anyone know, out of the Holocaust, we said never again. And that's never again for everyone.
Yeah. It is a conundrum, for lack of a better word, and we will see what the president does or doesn't do in the coming days. Now that we are talking publicly about what's happening privately inside the White House with regard to this divide. Let me cover a couple other things here. Let me move to this immigration issue. Again, a number of major pieces I was reading today in preparation for my dialogue with you about the president and immigration and the threat that it has become to his reelection bid. Trump has outflanked him on this issue. And by outflanked him, I mean that the immigration issue has gotten worse. Illegal immigration issue has gotten worse in his tenure, in his term. And he now feels politically vulnerable on this issue. If you were Joe Biden on the immigration issue, what would you do?
Well, I'm a journalist, and I hold those in power accountable. So I'm not Joe Biden, but I think what has horrified many immigration rights activists, certainly that we have talked to, is that you had, Trump separating families, incarcerating babies. And then people voted for President Biden. They said, immigration rights activists for humane policy. And in order for Biden to get past the billions he wants to send to Ukraine and to Israel, the Republicans insisted on militarizing the border even further. And so there were negotiations that went on in the Senate, and they agreed, the Democrats and the Republicans, to the horror of many immigrant rights activists, agreed on a much more militarized border. And then because Trump saw there was some level of bipartisanship, he told House Speaker Johnson, whatever you do, do not accept this. And so it was a Republican plan that the Democrats embraced, and then Trump vetoed it. And so you have this crazy situation right now. And who are victimized? It's people who are seeking sanctuary in this country, why our country was founded. And they are really at the target end of U.S. policy, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's a very serious issue. We also just interviewed Darlene Joseph, who is head of the Haitian Bridge Alliance out of California. She was in Washington because you remember those famous pictures at Del Rio where you had the Border Patrol
on the horseback
rain meeting the Haitians near the Del Rio Bridge.
Sure.
They're suing right now, and they're demanding to stop the deportations in a very dangerous situation and for what's happened to them at the border. I mean, we have to have a very serious bipartisan look at why people come to this country, and it comes from a good portion of it, U.S. foreign policy in places like Guatemala and Honduras, where many immigrants come from, because the U.S. has supported these regimes over the years that engaged in massacres, that engaged in genocide, and people flee. And people also follow the money. And when the money is going to the United States, we allow the money to come in here. Trade with Mexico is enormous, right? Allow the money to come in. But when people follow their money, we bring down the gates.
Yeah. No, it is the president's in a pickle on this issue. In some regards of his own doing, and to your brilliant analysis, in some regards because of the way Republicans have boxed him in. But he is clearly vulnerable on this immigration issue, and how he moves in the coming days, we shall see. When we come forward with our guest, Amy Goodman, now celebrating 28 years as host of Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report, the Congress failed to pass legislation that would avert a government shutdown on Friday. So here we are once again. Every few months, we kick this can down the road, and here we are all this week. Today's Monday. It's all week long. This will be the story. Will the government shut down once again on Friday? We shall see, but we'll get Amy's take on that, and then we'll close our program in this hour, I should say, with our conversation. Not our program. I still got 2 hours to go. We'll close this hour with Amy Goodman talking about a person that we both regard as a friend, a very, very dear friend of mine, who is being memorialized this Friday. Indeed, over the weekend, I received an award named for him, a major award that bears his name. I was the recipient of that award this weekend, and he is being memorialized this Friday. And I want to close our program in tribute to him. We'll talk about him when we come forward with Amy Goodman on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. At this year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your Black.
City of Los Angeles tenants know these facts about eviction and consumer debt. Tenants can't be evicted if rental arrears are eligible to be treated as consumer debt. Tenants who followed certain COVID-19 pandemic protections under state law can't be evicted for past due rent. Landlords can collect rental arrears in court as consumer debt, but tenants cannot be evicted if they provided a declaration of COVID-19 hardship and paid 25% of rent owed. Learn more at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Daylight come and me want go home. Work all night and a drink a rum. Daylight come and me want go home. Stack banana till the morning come. Daylight come and me want go home.
This Friday, we will memorialize our dear friend and brother, Harry Belafonte, who passed, as you know, some time ago, but a major memorial in New York City this Friday at the Riverside Church. I've been there so many times. Probably not as many times as Amy Goodman because she's based in New York City. I've spoken in that facility many times and attended many programs. Riverside is the place. And this Friday, we will memorialize our friend and brother, Harry Belafonte. We'll get to that in a moment. Before we close our hour with Amy talking about Harry Belafonte, Amy, your thoughts on this notion, at least as we sit right now, that there could be another government shutdown on Friday?
Well, first of all, it's wonderful to hear Harry's voice. Oh, my goodness, as he would have turned 97 on Friday. And I'm thrilled to hear you're going to be there because I'm going to be there, too. I'll get to see you, Tavis,
Yes.
at Riverside Church, where Dr. King gave that famous address a year to the day before he was assassinated. You know about it. You wrote books about it. But, you know, it's why he opposed the war in Vietnam. And Harry Belafonte, I'll just say government closure, biggest problem for people at the bottom. That's who always suffers, right? If you have government closure, you don't have the president, you don't have the House Speaker losing their jobs. But what happens is people get laid off, and it's a very serious issue. And it's about time people at the top and people in Congress understand what that means. Even for people to live in fear leading up to that moment is unacceptable, that they might not be able to feed their families.
No,
On the issue of Harry,
hold that thought 1 second. 1 second, Amy. Let me do this one more time, and I promise we'll close with your thoughts, which I'm anxious to hear. You spent some good time with Harry over the years, and so have I, and I want to just close our program in this hour, at least, in tribute to Harry Belafonte. We'll do that with Amy Goodman when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the Amera I Can Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the Amera I Can program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The Amera I Can Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriICanCommunity.partners. That's AmeriICanCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. 120,000 miles of night drives, daily commutes, and who knows how many.
Are we there yet?
Through countless fixes, elbow grease, and a new radiator, you kept your ride alive. With eBay Motors, you have over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
I
Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of cotton. Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of day. Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of cotton. Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of day. Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of cotton. Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of day. Gotta jump down, spin around.
This Friday would be Harry Belafonte's 97th birthday, and there is a major memorial to him taking place in New York City at the Riverside Church on the Upper West Side, celebrating the life and legacy of Mr. B, as I called him for many decades. Amy Goodman, your thoughts about our friend Harry Belafonte? Amy, can you hear me? Amy.
I hear you.
There you go.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, for people who don't know, we're coming into the Oscars soon. Harry Belafonte's 1956 album, Calypso, made him the first artist in history to sell more than 1 million LPs, won both a Tony and Emmy, awarded the National Medal of Arts, but it is his involvement with civil rights activism, his close friendship with Dr. King. I think he said he talked to him once. He met him every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say to Harry, I used to say to Mr. B, if you ever forget any of those conversations, just apply under the Freedom of Information Act to the FBI. I bet they have transcripts.
That's funny, and it's funny because it's probably true. I'm sure they do have the transcripts. What do you make of his unwavering, unapologetic advent into advocacy, into engaging in the civil rights movement? They're at a time when many artists, and even today, and people have a right to self-determination. There are artists who want to just be artists. They don't want to engage and involve themselves with the politics of the day. I call Mr. B a citizen artist. I always called him that. He was a citizen artist. And again, people have the right to self-determination, but he was so bold about it, Amy.
You're right. Mr. B stands for bold and brave. He was friends with Paul Robeson, Eleanor Roosevelt, Sidney Poitier, Kennedy, Marlon Brando, Nelson Mandela, Fidel Castro, Tony Bennett, Bill Clinton. He ran the gamut, and everyone loved him and I think feared him because he was just unwavering because he lived it. He lived the discrimination, right? He would be invited into the greatest venues to sing, but not be allowed to stay there. So he knew it personally, but it wasn't just because it was personal. He felt the pain of people who suffered for so long, and he was not, at the end of his life, he was going into prisons. He was working with people who were incarcerated. Every fiber of his soul was about being a humanitarian.
Yeah. There's a great organization here in L.A. called Second Call, and run by a brilliant brother named Skip. And they have an annual event, and at their event a few days ago, they bestowed upon me. I was humbled to receive the Harry Belafonte Award. Gina Belafonte, Mr. B's daughter, as you know, presented the award to me. So it's a great honor to receive anything that bears his name, and I can just only hope and pray that in my lifetime we honor his legacy by doing what you do every day, and that is speaking truth to power, and for that matter, to the powerless. As you celebrate your 28th anniversary this month, hosting Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report, what are you recommitting yourself to for the years to come, Amy Goodman?
Committing ourselves to being a platform for people who so often go unheard. When we talk about the death penalty, to go behind the bars that are behind the bars and hear from people on death row. When we talk about criminal justice or injustice, to hear from people on both sides of the bars, and to have a global platform for people to speak to each other across the planet. It's to make the world smaller because we're all in this together.
Yeah, we are in it together. And we'll leave it there for now. I am always, as I said an hour ago now, delighted to be in dialogue.
Congratulations on your Harry Belafonte Award.
No,
God,
you are too kind, Amy. I love you, and I deeply appreciate you. Congratulations on your 20th anniversary. I know there are many, many more years of your great work in front of you. Give my best to Juan, and I'll see you soon, Amy. All the best to you. Thank you.
See you soon, Tavis.
Amy
Bye-bye.
Goodman on Tavis Smiley. 2 more great hours in front of us. Stay tuned.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Both President Biden and Donald Trump will visit the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas this week.